because of the share rate is so efficient, it seems to me that is why it's possible in HEX to make so many APY, to make so many gains. And this brings us to the question, how does the payout work in HEX?
Sure.
Yeah, I just want to interrupt pretty quick. Thanks, guys, for all the followings, all the diamonds, all the things on DLive. We are also streaming on YouTube and on Twitter Live. So thanks for coming on the stream today. And yeah, I hope you like it. Just give us a follow, subscribe, whatever you want to. And thank you. Just let's move on, Kyle. So please. Okay. Explain us how the interest works in HEX.
Sure. People commonly refer to it as interest. And then they get a little confused because they talk about the inflation. They're like, inflation is a problem. So the way HEX works is that the contract mints new coins to pay people who are owed HEX. Just the very simplistic model. If you are owed HEX, it mints coins to pay you. The way that works in practice is that the contract knows how many HEX have been minted ever. So every time it mints coins, it has a track of that balance, of sort of the total number that are in circulation. And then when you stake coins, this is sort of a technical detail. So if people are not technical, this isn't a super important distinction. But when you stake coins, they are burned. They're removed from that total number in existence. But then it separately keeps track and says, HexLion has burned 100 coins for staking. So the total supply is reduced by 100, but the sort of virtual supply is increased by 100. The way that it pays people is the same as inflation. That's not a great way to put that. Every day that somebody interacts with the HEX contract, it checks the supply, meaning both real and virtual, and calculates how much it needs to inflate that day to be on track to inflate at 3.69% a year.
Just a quick question here. You say the real and the virtual HEX, because I was arguing with some people, like, what is the basement of this daily calculation? Is it all ever minted HEX, or is it all HEX in existence?
It's all ever minted.
Yeah.
And
so
this is
like today's payout is not increasing the basement of this daily calculation.
Yeah,
Only
because it's not minted yet.
Stakes get minted.
That's right. So the contract, to understand this, there are a lot of minutiae. So there's the HEX that have been minted and are in circulation and can be sent to people. They can be sold on exchange, whatever you want. And then there's HEX that have been staked. Those are burned, meaning the contract removes them and then records how many it removed. So again, if HexLion stakes 100 coins, that's subtracted from the total number that exists, but added to this virtual accounting that there are 100 staked. And then every day, when somebody first touches the contract, it says, okay, it's a new day. How much HEX is there between all the HEX that is staked, so all the virtual HEX, and then all of the real HEX in existence? And if I want to inflate at 3.69% per year, how much do I need to inflate today to be on track for that? And then it has a number that it uses. It's like 0.009955% or something of that total. And it says, okay, so here's the number I need to inflate today to be on track for that much, for that annual inflation rate. So it takes the daily inflation rate that it needs to do so that it's on track to hit an annualized rate of 3.69. And then it takes that number, we'll say that's the daily inflation, and it records it. And it says, okay, today the inflation number needed to be X, some number. And it just does that every day. And so every day you have this string, it's stored on the network, but you have all of these buckets. Today, the number needed to be this because I had this many HEX. So it doesn't actually record the daily, it doesn't snapshot that. It snapshots some other things, but every day it takes a snapshot of key data so that it can do all the payouts correctly. But the important one for your question about inflation and payments is that it records what the inflation needs to be on that day to hit this annualized rate. So if it minted it immediately, then we would be inflating at 3.69%, but those tokens wouldn't be owned by anybody because it just has to mint them into the air. So instead, it just makes a note of what that number ought to be. So if it needs to be 100, it just says, okay, on December 3rd, it needed to be 100. On December 4th, it needed to be 101. On December 5th, it needed to be 102. Then, when you end your stake, when anyone ends their stake, the contract knows when you started, and it knows when you ended. And it just walks through each of those snapshots and says, okay, the inflation needed to be 100. How much of that do you get? Then it uses a different part of the snapshot, which is how many total shares existed on that day. And then it says, okay, so there were 1 million shares total. You had 1,000 shares on that day. So you get 1/1000th of that inflation number. And so it says, okay, so add, 0.1. So 1,000th of 100 is 0.1. So for December 3rd, you get 0.1. Let's go to the next day. You get 0.101 because you get 1,000th of the 101 and then 1,000th of the 102. And the reason it's snapshotted is because stakes can start and stop every day. So that million number is going to move. So as more people stake, that million goes up, and then you have a smaller percentage. As people end stake and their shares go down, that million may go down, and then your 1,000 is a larger percentage. So your daily payout is going to be different every day. So it has snapshotted how much it needs to inflate for the day, and then when you end stake, it figures out how much of that day you are entitled to. And at the end of walking through all these days, it has a total, and that total is your accrued interest over the course of your stake. So then it takes your original principal, the virtual HEX that it made note of, and that it is added to this payout that you've earned, and then that is returned to you. The virtual number is reduced, the real number is incremented, and now we're kind of back to normal. You've sort of taken your principal HEX out of the void of virtual HEX, and you've gotten your payout. We recompute the share rate based on that total to make sure that our price is correct, so that if you restake, you'll be neutral, and then you're done.
Well, thank you, Kai. This is like really, really technical, and you're doing a great job explaining it really easy, so you can really picture it in every little single step. And you know what I think about HEX, about something really static. If the share rate is this, I try to think, okay, just slash it in divide it to 365, and then you have your thing. But that's not like this at all. It is like really, really dynamic. It's calculating every day and actually looking at the behavior of the stakers, and then that's how the everything is paid out, right? Yep. So it's like a really, really lovely mathematical system HEX is. It's awesome.